بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الخلق أجمعين. Start the session of today related to the course The Rise of the Novel, starting with some aspects of the novel created and done by E.N. Forster. So aspects of the novel were lectures by one of the greatest modern novelists, E.M. Forster, and this collection of lectures became a book published as it is seen here in 1927. Okay, first we have the aspect concerning the title, The Rise of the Novel. What do we mean by the rise of the novel? So the novel is clear, and the rise doesn't mean like the sun rising, the sun rising. Yeah, it is. It means, or it is similar as abstraction, So there is a connotative idea, connotative meaning that we need to realize. What are we studying? We're studying the rise of the novel. It is a course. The novel is direct. Okay, the novel is direct, but the rise has maybe some dimensions for some theorists. For me, personally, it is similar to appreciating drama and appreciating poetry as initiating courses to start dealing with a genre of literature, like the novel, like drama, like poetry, or any genre of literature. Okay, so the rise as the meaning can say, or the direct denotation can tell us, so it is the growth, the start, the commencement, the beginning of the novel. And why it is done by Forster, Edward Morgan Forster, because he is a great novelist. Okay, so he made some lectures talking about novel. His lectures are what are theories, because he's a novelist and he's an expert in the field. Let's start with what? With the introduction. Talking about novel in general, the novelist Forster, and his views, his perspectives, his theories about what? About novel. Sometimes we can call them what? The elements of the novel. According to him, there are 7. Let's start reading some hints, some extracts, and try to paraphrase, explain, to discuss, to evaluate for what? For understanding the concept of novel in general. So, E.M. Forster's 1927 lectures. Okay, look. So here we have what? Lectures on the English language novel in Cambridge. It is in a college. He used to deliver his lectures. Okay, were published. These lectures were published as aspects of the novel, elements of the novel, hints of the novel, components of the novel. Forster addresses 7 elements of the novel that he believes, and he is right in his believing. They are what? Universal. Now, they are what? Universal. Majority of writers, of theorists, of pioneers, of academics, okay, connected with or related to the novel. So they believe in these, what we call elements of the novel created by E.M. Forster. By the way, you notice that E.M. Forster is modern novelist and essayist, lecturer, okay, of the 20th century. And the rise of the novel, we speak about what? The beginning, the commencements, the growth, the development. From what? From the 17th century, 16th century, let's say. So they are what? They are universal. And using classic works, and we have to stop here to realize the novel, the fiction, which can be classic. It means it can be what? It can be educational, it can be academic, to be studied, analyzed, evaluated, examined, defended in what? In academic institutions like universities and others. But there are many works of literature like fiction. They are what? They are not classical. They are not taken as what you call classical novels. So they are excluded from being academic, to be studied, to be analyzed in universities or what you call educational institutions. So using classic works by many of the world's best authors. So he is one of them. As example, we need to realize those what we call elements. If they are 7, we can. Sometimes we can get more than that. But according to E.M. Forster, there are 7 phases, elements, aspects. What are they? Story, characters, plot, fantasy, prophecy, pattern, and rhythm. And we should stop here. At the end, we need to stop a while, a little, about pattern and rhythm. Why? Because these 2 are more abstract than the others. The others somehow are direct, but here they are what? Connotative. Because pattern and especially rhythm is used with what? With the poetic language. What is poetic language? Related to what? To poetry, in some cases, of course, and in dealing with what you call pattern and rhythm in language, in literature. So we deal with what? With connotation, with imagination, with symbolism, several other aspects related to what? To, for example, musical language, poetic language, right? But generally the novel, mostly as prose, doesn't need that what we call elevated pattern or high rhythm in what? In the language used. Forster, and his opinion refers the idea of all novelists through history working concurrently and side by side to the approach of looking at the novel as chronological progression. Chronological, connected with what? With history. He begins by stating that if nothing else, if there is no other definition, so it can be believed that a novel, and here is a definition, a novel is a story. Yeah, it can be. No one can say no. So a story, a tale, an anecdote that unfolds over time. Yeah, here is the point. Here is the point. He emphasizes the value of character, 1, and claims that a great novel can have both flat and round characters. Yes, as you know, in a literary work, novel, drama, story, short story, let's say, there are characters. There must be characters. Otherwise, the work will not be called a novel, a drama, or short stories. Sometimes, if it is one character, it lacks many things, many aspects. But those characters, not the same. They are not exact in action, in rules, in intellectuality, and many other points. They are different. Some of them, they are what? They are direct, simple, flat. Some other are what? Complicated, frustrating in their imagination, in their philosophy. And again, all of these points are what? Showing the intellectuality of the writer, of the author, of the novelist. Either the flat and round, who creates such a novel. So making different characters of different aspects, sometimes can send hints to the greatness of this novel or that. So again, Prosta sees the necessity of plot. After the character, we have plot, story, plot, character. So what about plot? Reduces the impression of tension. You remember I told you before, and you will study the plot in details. You will study it as a definition. And in drama also, you will have the plot frequently studied, mentioned. Tension means action, rising action. Okay? As a problem because it frequently, sequence frequently results in the sacrifice of the main character. The main character or characters. Why? In order to provide the novel's resolution. Yeah, the end. To start from the beginning, rising action, high, until the climax. So the climax means the top, the climax, the peak of the event. Then after that, what? Falling down of the action. Okay, here we have just to see an example. If we have space here, yeah, going back. So here is what the beginning. Here is the end. Beginning, end. The plot start from here, like this, for example, until this point, until the peak, like climax. Then it goes down. After what? Knowing the ideas to the end. So here is what we call the action, rising action. Here we have a beginning. Here we have a middle. From here until here. All these, what we call them, the points of what? Of climax, the point of intense action. Then after that, calming down the action, the events, the story, to the end, until here. Okay, it is the what you call imaginative idea about the plot. So again, in order to provide the novel's resolution. Going back to Forster, who says fantasy and prophecies as key components of the great novel. Not any novel, again, not any novel, the great novel, because those aspects, convey a sense of the universal or spiritual as elements, universal elements, spiritual elements, making the novel what? Great. He criticizes what? He criticizes the pattern that might be used to arrange a story as another element. So again, pattern, as we mentioned, is extra component of the novel that frequently sacrifices the life of the characters. Okay, here's a perspective of him, of Forster. He draws on the analogy. Yeah, again, the analogy is another idea, another aspect of the novel. The analogy of music to reach the conclusion that rhythm, which he defines as repetition plus variation. These elements are poetic, mostly connected with poetic devices. Okay, music, rhythm, repetition, variation. All these elements are related, connected to poetry. Okay, so why he is using them in the novel? To make the novel what? High, prestigious, dignified in the used language. Okay, so why again? Enables, according to him, enables an aesthetically pleasing structure to emerge from the novel while upholding the integrity of the characters and the open-ended nature that gives a novel's feeling of expansiveness. Yeah, why it is long? It helps in what? In making the novel long as possible. We postpone the biography of the author as assignment for you to read, prepare assignments, and in further coming sessions or classes, we can select some of you to speak about E.M. Forster or Edward Morgan Forster, okay, the writer, the novelist, and the essayist, in his perspectives about what? About the concept of the novel. We need to talk about him as a novelist and as an essayist, okay, or lecturer also. Here we have so many ideas about him that we should not forget that he wrote some amazing novels, modern novels, okay, particularly A Passage to India. Okay, so in addition to aspects of the novel, this collection of lectures, which became a book, right? Two important essays collections, okay, were written by him. Being a Harvest, which was published or written in 1936, and two, Cheers for Democracy, which was written in 1951. After his death on June the 2nd of 1970 in Coventry, England, his novel, okay, Morris, again, here is the date, don't forget the date, the dates are important, was published for the first time, apparently surpassed by the author because of its autobiographical content concerning a young homosexual man. I mean, this is a defect to try to solve within the problems facing the society. Okay? But again, we should not forget that, inshallah ta'ala, you will study one of the best novels for A.M. Forster in the modern novel, and I guess maybe it can be A Passage to India or maybe others. Yeah, English literature. A question can come to you. You have to try preparing for now in the exams. Okay, write about English literature. Brief, okay, introductory, what we call paragraph or paragraphs about English literature. Well, if we need to speak about literature, we need books and books and books. In general, and English literature in particular, yeah, we need again books. It is encyclopedic, okay, volume. But here we have some 1 page or 2 pages, okay, to tell about what? About the introduction of the novel connected to the aspects of the novel by A.M. Forster. Those ideas are important. Just to read, then we can figure out what is necessary to focus on, to stress on. It is helpful to have a rudimentary understanding. Yeah, should be rudimentary, means sufficient understanding of the usual chronological periodization connected with time from the beginning, from the start. Don't forget, the first task is, okay, to write about the author biography, about A.M. Forster as a novelist, as an essayist, and as a lecturer, with reference to aspects of the novel, Okay, so usual chronological periodization of English literature during the time periods in which the works described by Forster. So again, huge number of ideas we can have, but we are squeezing our ideas or limiting them to what? To Forster, to the ideas of Forster concerning novel, not general literature. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We produced, even though Forster specifically avoids any discussion of historical development in the novel. Why again? Why? Because the subject or the matter or the issue is what is very vast, very huge, expansive one. Not simple, not easy, not small, not short. The four great novelists of the 18th century are mentioned by Preston during his discussion. Daniel Defoe, underline it. Daniel Defoe. Daniel Defoe is what is the writer of Robinson Crusoe. Robinson Crusoe is the novel which we are going to study as an example of the rising of the novel. Don't forget that. Whose major work first appeared, major works in what? In 1720s. Second one is Samuel Richardson's and Henry Fielding, whose major works both first appeared in the 1740s and 1750s. So we are in the 18th century. Samuel Johnson, Robert Burns, Oliver Goldsmith, and Alexander Pope were significant poets of the 18th century. Yeah. By the way, in times we can find the poet is a novelist, the novelist is a poet, the poet is a dramatist also. So we can find multi-literary figures. A poet, a dramatist at the same time. A dramatist, a novelist. A poet, a novelist. Majority of them. Starting with the aspects as a sort of summary, just giving here summary, not reading the book, summary. The book is to be read by what? By my scholars, my students, you, to read the book, aspects of the literature, for what? For your background, for increasing your background of English, experience, knowledge. Okay, because we cannot read the book in one or two lectures, just we getting what? Summary, introductory. In this summary, we have introduction. What can we get from this introduction? Ideas, some important ideas. Like what? Like when first lays forth the guidelines for his discussion. Yeah. In the introduction, he gives what? Hints, elements, the basis of what? Of his discussion, of his explanation, of his interpretation of the English novel in an introductory chapter. Right? So again, defines the novel. He defines the novel as a fiction in prose, but also sometimes it can be poetic, as he mentioned, as we believe also, to some extent. So a fiction in prose to some extent. Don't forget this. Don't forget this. It can be what? It can be a hint, a set of questions in the exams. Okay, either direct writing or what you call multiple choices, completing, matching, true, false, like that. He continues by defining English literature as works created in English language. Yeah, should be with the language, regardless of the author's place of origin or geographical location. So English it is not British. English is not American. Okay, so English is international. Nevertheless, regardless of what of the place that the writer, okay, is born or lives. Most crucially, Forster makes it clear that historical issues like chronology, realization of the novel's evolution will what? Not be discussed in this context. Why? As we mentioned, because he needs time, or the issue needs time to be discussed. Just giving what hints, isharat, or what you call glimpse. Strange from one of the students to ask at the beginning in the first lectures how the questions will be. Read, understand, improve yourself in the language, and don't worry about the questions. Going back to Forster states unequivocally refers to say the greatest novels in history sitting in a circle. All of them simultaneously writing novels in a type of British Museum reading room. He accepts that the word aspects of the novel is intentionally vague. Vague doesn't mean that it is impossible or cannot deal with. No, but it is what? Difficult. What is difficult? Difficult means hard work to be what? To be configured, to be figured out, okay? To be paraphrased, to be analyzed, evaluated. Then it will be easy. In order to suggest an open-ended debate, okay? This open-ended debate in which he, the writer, even Forster, he will explore 7 of these aspects. Again, going back to what? To the aspects. They are 7. Don't forget, huh? The one he said or she said, how the questions will be. Like this, for example, Frost in his lectures spoke about 6 aspects, okay, of the novel. True or false? Yeah, you think about them. So again, they are story, 1, characters, 2, plot, 3, fantasy, 4, prophecy, pattern, and the second is what? Is rhythm. Okay? But we need to realize that those, what we call elements of the novel, they are different in importance. Sometimes we depends on characters, plot. What is the story? The story is various in dimensions. Fantasy, it can be fiction, it can be real. Fantasy can be available, can be not. Prophecy is available even in poetry, in drama, okay, but also it can be what? It can be just social. Direct hints to reality, pattern and rhythm when making the language what? Poetic. Elevated high language. Elevated or high language. The first one, let's read some lines of this first element, the story. Okay, what does Forster mean by the story? Forster states at the outset of his chapter, on the narrative that, at its most fundamental level, a novel tells a tale. No one deny that. All novels, all dramas, all short stories, they are tales, anecdotes, right? He continues by stating that suspense or the question of what happens next. Yes, after making the idea clear, it is a tale. Okay, so what after? Must be the foundation of the story. The story is therefore described for him as a narrative of events, ordered in their time sequence. And this now we can mix similarity. We can mix a similarity between the novel and drama, even the short story, but the short story is what is short in time, place, and action maybe. Narrative, yeah, it needs longness, riwayah of events. It can be one event or events, one story, one big story of different chapters to be what? To tell about events. Ordered, sequenced, placed in their time sequence. Yeah, from the beginning, middle, until the end. Chapter 1, what happened where? Chapter 2, what happened where? Like that. So he continues by saying that a good story, of course, and a good story is the sense of meaning, must have a sense of value. It is not just rubbish telling. No, it should be of what? High estimation. Okay? It should be of great, what you could, interest, benefit to the society. He critiques the antiquary as having no sense of worth. His opinion. No sense of the worth in narrative while the following a strict order of events. Forster critic cites the War and Peace novel by Russian author. Okay, so it is not English only, but international. Russian author, Leo Tolstoy, English only, but international. Russian author, Leo Tolstoy, as an illustration of a war that finds meaning in a chronology of events. Yeah, sometimes what with the academics, the lectures, they need to give examples. He cites American author Gertrude Stein as an example of the novelist who tried to eliminate time from a work. Eliminate means to exclude, not to add time, okay, in his work of literature as a novel. A work of fiction and leave just the truth, focusing on the events, on the realities, not depending on chronology or in history or in time. So, again, according to Forster, if the work misses time, it is what? It is failing, according to him, according to his opinion, to his perspective. Going to the second element, character. What do you mean by character, according to whom? To E.M. Forster. Forster talks about the book's characterization in two of the people chapters. So he has made two lectures, two chapters to speak about characters under the concept of people. He lists the 5 fundamental truths of human life, which are birth, fall, sleep, love, and death. All these elements, all these concepts are connected with what? With people, with the characters. Because they deal with what? They deal with action, and action cannot be done except by what? By people, with movement. And then contrast these 5 experiences between real individuals, homo, and fictional ones. The first one is species, and the second one is spectres. He then discusses Moll Flanders, a character from the same name Defoe book. So Forster gives example of other works to support his idea. Concentrates on Moll Flanders as a novel in which the form is drawn from the evolution of the main character. Evolution of the main character, the growth related to the main character. You remember maybe what we had mentioned in the previous session about the hero, about the protagonist and the antagonist, the main character. And what kind of character this mean? Is he just hero? Is he a protagonist or antagonist? So Forster makes a distinction between flat and round characters, as we mentioned at the beginning, that characters are various in what? In responsibilities, intellectualities, thinking, behaving. Okay? With flat characters having a more clear and straightforward characterization. The flat means simple, direct, not complicated like the round character or characters. So the round character or characters have a more complicated and developed characterization. Forster sees benefits in the novel's employment of both flat and character. Both of them, they are necessary. Both of them, they are necessary to make the work natural. If they are the same, there is no action, there is no attraction, there is no appeal. But there should be differences in people. I'm sure that even among the one family of you, you can find if there are the father, the mother, the boys, the girls, the sisters, the daughters. Each one has different what we call characterization. They are eating from the same meal, they are drinking from the same water, they are growing up in the same atmosphere, but everyone has his own, her own what you call characterization or behaviors or qualities, right? Yeah, so flat and round behaviors should be what should be available among the characters in a novel to make the novel diverse and attractive or appealing. He cites Charles Dickens as an example of the novelist or a novelist who, despite having almost entirely flat characters, Charles Dickens, like in the novel called Great Expectations, yeah, the characters are great. Yeah, the characters are great, interesting. The event is nice, but the majority of them, they are not complicated. Okay, except a girl and a woman. But the main hero is what is, let's say, somehow flat. Okay, simple. Flat characters develops a view of humanity that is not shallow. Yeah, direct. After briefly discussing a point of view, his points of view, Forster comes to the conclusion that this is important. This is important. To come to the conclusion that books with inconsistent or shifting points of view, are not necessarily problematic as long as the author can successfully incorporate, mix these changes into the novel plot, making the characters attractive. Within what? Within the plot. The plot is going with a sequence, order, okay? Necessary to incorporate them. For what? For making the, what you call, the novel first long with different actions, and these different actions should, okay, get appeal of what? Of the readers. After the story, after the characters, we have the plot. Okay, plot is very interesting one, very important. But now we are dealing with the plot from what? From the opinion of A.M. Forster. Forster describes the plot as a narrative of events over time with a focus on causality. In a chapter on the plot, I mean, when he spoke in a lecture called chapter, the chapter is titled, okay, the plot. According to him, reading comprehension calls for what? For readers to have both intelligence and memory. Yeah, necessary to be put in mind. Forster examines George Meredith, whom he believes, if not a brilliant novelist, is one of the England's best masters of the story. He then cites Thomas Hardy, going to Thomas Hardy, and Thomas Hardy is a poet also, as an example of novelist whose characters suffer as a result of the plot's rigid framework. Yeah. The plot in Hardy's is what is solid, not moving, making the characters what? Suffering. Okay. In other words, the characters are created to fit the plot's parameter and lack a distinct personality, right? But sometimes they are what? They are integrated, as we mentioned before, integrated, related, correlated among each other, both the characters and the plot. Who is what you call achieving the plot? The characters. and the characters should go parallel according to the plot. Because of the demands of narrative, he claims that almost all novels are frail towards the end. An opinion. This is his opinion, and that the novelist or a novelist or any novelist must write a conclusion at the expense of the characters. Again, a point of view to write a conclusion. A conclusion is what is making the picture clear for the reader to understand if there is or there are some ambiguous points. If there is an ambiguous point or some ambiguous or vague points, the reader cannot understand it or understand them. Okay? Going to the next point, pattern and rhythm. Pattern and rhythm. Shifting from novel, from story into what? Into elevated poetic language, into poetry. If the novel has the characteristic of poetry, so it is high and not complicated, but let's say sophisticated in its pattern and in its what? Composing of the language, like rhythm, right? Rhythm. Rhythm is what? Is the intonation, the variation, the repetition, the reaction, recurrence of what? Of what you call syllables in a word or phrases or whatever. To give what? To give beat, music, intonation, melody to what? To the language, to the paragraph, to the speech, to the dialogue among characters or in the explanation of the narrator. So again, what can we understand of pattern and rhythm? Forster addresses the novel's use of pattern in terms of visual arts. Visual art in the chapter of rhythm and pattern. If it is visual, it means that it depends on watching or saying more than just listening. He compares the hourglass-like structure of that by Anatole France to the chain-like structure of Percy Lubbock's Roman images. He concludes that patterns gives a book an aesthetic aspects of beauty. Then Forster talks about Henry James' book, The Ambassador or Ambassadors, which he argues sacrifices the character's life to the rigid hourglass pattern of the plot. Yeah, if the plot is rigid, there is a sacrifice for what? For the characters. Forster comes to the conclusion that patterns in novels are problematic. Patterns, problematic. How is that? Because they close the door to existence, not sharing with other elements, focusing mostly on these, what you call rhythm and pattern, musical, visual. So at this point, I feel that it is closer to a poetry from the novel. But also, if it is available in the novel as a story, it makes the language sophisticated, high in estimation, within imagination, within symbolism, to make it what? To make it great, to make it nice, to make it appealing. He then discusses rhythm, which he defines as repetition, pulse, variation. Again, yeah, so as we mentioned before, repetition, pulse, variation, plus variation are elements of poetry. And argues that it is more appropriate for the novel than the pattern. He gives example or cites Marshall Proust's multi-volume masterpiece, what you could Remembrance of Things, Past as the illustration, as an example of the effective application of rhythm. Forster comes to the conclusion that novels' rhythm again, necessary. This is necessary. So it offers a more flexible narrative structure without compromising character. What is his views, his opinions, perspectives about those 7 elements are briefly done in this sentence called conclusion. Forster speculates or contemplates or thinks about the novel's future in a brief conclusion and claims that the novel won't alter at all because human nature doesn't change. There should be change. And life is changing. If life has no change, so there is no life. The author comes to the conclusion that the growth of the novel within its aspects, don't forget, within its aspects, is really just the evolution of humanity. Me and others, we agree with this point. We agree with this point. It is necessary that the growth of the novel, the growth of the story, the growth of the drama as literary genre is really just the evolution of humanity. Yeah, it is connected with humanity. Here is the end of today's point of view concerning the aspects of the novel by A.M. Forster. Next session, inshallah ta'ala, we are going to deal with the key figures, okay, as pioneer novelist in English, talked about by A.M. Forster, explaining their characteristics. So today recording will be stopped and questions to be answered. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.